start thinking. I mean, don't go by the propaganda or the stories or the narrative being told or sold to you. Reality is completely different or much different than what is being told. So the best thing is to analyze on our own. And
this entire pandemic, especially with India, and I know you have also commented on a great deal about the fiscal policy and the recent budget that we had. So, considering the changes in the oil prices, the drop, and the entire scenario going on in the Middle East,
yeah.
uh, and people staying at home, strictly not using vehicles, so the demand for petrol in general being reduced in India, will it be any booster for the economy and the budget, Indian budget?
It should have been actually, because there are two items which cost hugely for India's budget. One is gold, and second is petrol, the fuel, the carbo. See, the reason is that because we are again importers. We are, living on 80% of fuel needs are, taken care of because of the imports. We don't have enough energy sources. And $1 rise in petrol prices adds to something like 4,600 crore rupees strain on Indian budget. So currently the petrol prices, crude prices have hit the rock bottom. It should have been an ideal situation for India to make or to save a lot of money. But unfortunately, the virus attack also is around the same time. And secondly, around the same time, our imports have they're stagnated, but exports have gone down badly. So because of that, rupee is hit like anything. Rupee is completely doldrum. So India was having record foreign exchange reserves. So 50% of those reserves have been spent to stabilize the rupee. Okay. Because so ideally that money could have been used for some better purposes. That was part of the budget. Budget was based on $55 a barrel price. But when prices go down to 20, 25, so it's a direct saving, $30 a barrel. And considering the size of number of barrel oil we require, it's a huge saving. But that saving has been vanished, it's been used to stabilize rupee. So we are again back to square one. It's again an unfortunate thing, but that's the reality.
The exhaustion of foreign reserves and devaluation of rupee is really taking a hit. We also observe it in our day-to-day businesses and transactions. But in this dynamic change, what could be the next financial steps for the Indian government for the next 6 months and then in the long term?
I think they should get rid of this fiscal deficit fear. The whole exercise of Indian budget last few years has been to keep the budget, or at least show, not keep, but to present it as if they have managed it up to 3.5% of the GDP. So the fear of, and Indian government has an act called FRBM Act, like Financial Responsibility and Budget Management Act. It doesn't allow governments to go beyond 3.5% of the GDP. 3.5%. So the issue is that now, so they have to keep aside that act and start spending. And what has happened because of this FRBM rule, they have borrowed from their own entities, their own companies, which is not shown in the budget. So on the one hand, they have maintained it, that level of 3.5%, the cap. But on the other hand, there is a lot of spending from institutions like Food Corporation of India. Some 70,000 crores were borrowed from Food Corporation of India. So a huge amount, around the same size, was borrowed from the Small Saving Association of India. This is not budgeted. This is not shown in the budget document. So actually, the deficit is much more higher if it is done in honestly and very transparent manner. So the problem, because of that, what has happened, there is no fiscal space for the government now to spend money. So only way left is now to print money. So obviously it invites the inflation, but they have to risk it now because there is no money available in the market. Government of India is expecting corporates to donate to Prime Minister's Relief Fund when the Prime Minister himself can authorize RBI to print more money. Okay. So they're not doing that. They're not willing to do that because they're afraid of IMF, World Bank criticism of being fiscally irresponsible. So, but responsible at what cost? So there has to be balanced on that. There has to be some cost-benefit ratio studied. Somebody should study from the government of India point to do that, and they should start spending. I mean, there is a scheme called rural, which is basically for rural jobless youth. That kind of thing they have to start implementing in cities also. It's a huge crisis. I mean, when you have what do you call 1 crore job requirement, 100 million people, youth coming out every year for the job market, and jobs are not being created. So it's a pressure cooker situation. So to address that, government will have to invest, because in this kind of situation, it's too much of to expect from the private sector. They are as equally they are wary and worried about the situation. So government will have to start spending at some point of time. Earlier the better. That's what I think. But that point is not seen in the near future, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good insight actually. And when I look at this from a geopolitical perspective again, for example, in the beginning of this, almost a couple of months ago, somewhere in February, we saw that Russia and Saudi Arabia rather formed not exactly a conglomerate, but the barrel cost for oil per barrel cost was coming down around $20 to $25, making the shale industry, oil industry in the US just having a different shake-up as well. So this was like, I would say, taking advantage of the situation or
Yeah.
capitalizing on the situation. In the similar way, would it be possible for India to, uh, let's say, take a benefit or ask for a favor in terms of their international borrowing, getting concessions from the IMF, or just having some actual quantifiable concessions with respect to, let's say, giving more hydrochloroquine and things like that?
See, very interesting point. But such kind of exercise will come with its own cost, and which is to be paid in political ways. So the moment government starts seeking something from IMF and World Bank or whatever, it will be seen as crisis in India. So people immediately will recall those things, what happened in 1991 when India had to pledge gold. So that one aspect. Secondly, as we speak, OPEC is meeting now. OPEC meeting is on to basically decide on reviving prices upwards. So on that game, how much leverage India has, I doubt. We are basically a market. It's nothing more than we are a big player, but just a market, not from changing the rules position. We are not into that. So ideal way was encouraging US imports. That was happening. The US had become a big exporter of oil for India in the recent past. But because of this prices, OPEC and non-OPEC countries and politics between the two groups, it has hit badly. So it now becomes extremely impossible for Saudi Arabia to manage the show, because Saudi budget is pegged at something like $80. Even Russia is also around the same, but Russia has some other ways to make money, which Saudi Arabia doesn't have. So only option there is oil, and now their only game is to kill US oil industry. So if US oil doesn't get more than $50 a barrel, the new shale and other oil and the Mexico Gulf and other areas, it will be unaffordable for them. So this game of basically with what happened in 1960s between Arabs and non-Arabs and America, it's enacted again in a different way. In those days, America tried to suppress Saudi oil industry. Now Saudi is trying to suppress American oil industry. So it's come a full circle, and we as a market, we are just left to watch the game, and suffer also into it.
Yeah, that's really good to know in terms of how this, it's, I would say, not a cold war, but a very intense situation of tension between all different countries. And because you are in journalism, I feel curious to ask you this. Having a good grasp on the world events, do you think other countries, or in general, all countries, right from let's say Singapore, Malaysia, or the Southeast Asian countries, Middle East, South Asia, and the US, are they being competitive, or how competitive will they be in the near future to just again retain the number one mark?
For oil, you mean?
Not only for oil, but in general about the economy, having foreign inflows.
Uh, See, like country like Vietnam also has taken advantage of the situation in China. Vietnam is now one of the biggest exporters. Bangladesh has taken advantage of situation around. It's becoming major exporters. Uh, Unfortunately, India has failed to catch this situation, or miss the bus again, because as things are changing and as the world starts looking inwards, as it is, people see it's other side of the globalization. So opportunities are shrinking, and over and above that, we have our own issues like what do you call the migrants and the citizenships and all those things, So I mean, unnecessarily we got into that, and it impacted the economic situation also. But unfortunately, the narrative set on Indian soil on economy is about taking Indian economy to an imaginary level called $5 trillion economy. Currently, we are just around 2.3 or so, so doubling the economy. But the funny thing is that it's funny because average economic literacy is so poor in India. So people are happy buying that dream of making $5 trillion economy, assuming it happens even today or next 6 months down the line, whatever, or next year. Even then, India's per capita income will be much less than what it is in Indonesia, for example.
Yeah.
You mentioned Indonesia, so that's a good comparison actually. So the whole point is, what goals are we setting? It's not about human development index. It's not about overall health index. It's not about education. Setting that $5 trillion economy goal, we are diverting the attention of the people. That's fine. That's good for politics. But it's impacting economic focus also. What are we going to achieve? I mean, still we will be less than a middle income country, the income, even after becoming $5 trillion economy. Because it's simple arithmetic. I mean, $5 trillion economy and the total population divided, it's as simple as that. So I think our focus has to be changed now. What like China did in after 1990, I mean, becoming a export hub. Instead of that, we talk about the slogans given by the current political establishment was "Make in India." I mean, that's fine, but make in India for whom? I mean, you have to look at the world as a market, And when the problem is that when Indian Prime Minister visits Davos, he talks about opening up borders, how we should be more and more into this game. And once back in India, he talks exactly opposite of closing borders, raising tariff on various and imported issues and all that. So this lack of clear economic theory or economic focus is also impacting the economic growth.
Right, right. And in your opinion, how long would this situation take to come under control in India so that we start functioning as good as normal?
I think this dynamics after this virus has changed completely. No one knows what exactly is the damage. First thing we have to think about bringing back to normalcy. You can easily pull the shutter down. You can easily announce the lockdown with cops and security forces. But opening up takes time, courage, and control. Currently, we lack it. Even under the lockdown, there were hundreds of instances where people still gathered at various places, various reasons. So, what will happen post lifting of those? That's an issue. So, we have to bring back economy slowly, step by step, normal, and actually entire nation is holding its breath and waiting for the meeting that is to take place tomorrow, Saturday, between Prime Minister and the Chief Minister, which is expected to decide the next few kind of course of action, So I hope they will, because currently, according to Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, only 80 to 82 districts are badly impacted by the coronavirus. So one theory is that focus on those 80 districts and leave rest hundreds of them, allow them basically to live a normal life. If that happens, I think also, and along with the rains which are now expected in next month end, if there is a good harvest, I think by November, December, if things go in the right direction, we should be giving a semblance of normalcy.
Well, it's really nice to know about two things about the El Nino factor that we'll get to know about the harvest towards the end of April. It will be a good index. And like you mentioned about the $5 trillion economy, as lucrative and as nice the number looks like, it will still be important to have qualitative development of other metrics, and we should actually track other metrics. One last question before we wrap up. One piece of advice or just a heads up to the current people in India, or let's say all over the world, in terms of how you can maintain your own internal economy, your finances, some messages for the youth especially, so that don't be boggled down by the jobless numbers and still try to develop more skills. What more could you tell about this aspect of personal finance?
No, I mean, every opportunity I like to take just only one thing. Start thinking. I mean, don't go by the propaganda or the stories or the narrative being told or sold to you, reality is completely different or much different than what is being told. So the best thing is to analyze on our own, and there are hundreds of ways to do that. And especially a generation like yours, it's on its own. It started thinking impassionately, which is the need of the hour now in India, because we as an Indian citizen, they think with heart. I think it's too much of heart now. We have to start using our brains also, and the real answer to all our problems lies in the brain, not in the heart. And I hope this kind of calamity will at least teach us a lesson to think from with brain and not heart.
Well, that's a really great point, sir, and that brings us to the conclusion of this video by Pradnya Tantra. Like sir just mentioned, emotions are important at some level, but intellect and thinking properly, building those techniques of developing intellect is what Pradnya Tantra is all about. Please subscribe to our channel, and thank you very much, sir. Namaste, and thanks a lot for your time. I hope to talk to you very soon. Thank you, all the audience.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.